Soccer, a cruel sport. You can be the better team, have the better stats, have all the momentum, and still get scored on, and ultimately still lose the game. You know, Mike Geo likes to get critical, get into the weeds of what went wrong and what we could do better. We still gonna do that today on this episode. But this, for me, was a tough loss because I thought we played so well the majority of the game. Our game against Seattle was just a cruel loss, but also a loss nonetheless. I'm Mike Geo, and this is the Penalty Kick Podcast. We're here for all the SDFC stuff. If you've been supporting my show, been, reaching out, I appreciate y'all. It's so much fun to get to, talk with y'all, whether it's on the comments, whether it's at the stadium, just have an absolute blast. But if y'all new to the show, we break down all things SDFC, especially when it comes to the actual game. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I appreciate all y'all, but let's get to it. Let's get into it right now. We got to start with the lineups. Y'all know I was calling for lineup changes when we had the 3 games in 7 days. We're kind of going through that exact same stretch here. Obviously, we had a game last weekend. We have a game midweek this week, and then we have a game on the weekend. And it's just really unsustainable to not make changes. Mikey Varas made some changes today, and I really like the changes that he made. He put Verhoeven in for Willie. Willie is injured, so that was kind of an easy call, but Verhoeven has played well. We'll get into him in a minute. He also put in Alvarado for Godoy. Godoy is 35 years old, so, hey, I'm almost 40. You got to make those changes because let me tell you, it is tough, harder to recover as you get older. And let me tell you, my wheels are hurting every time I play some soccer, every time I play some basketball. Anytime I did Ragnar, I was in pain. But good calls. I like those changes. I like him there. Lastly, he put Valakari up front, moved Mighton to the left, put Dreer on the right, so Chucky was on the bench. So 3 changes really from our normal starting lineup. Again, I like the rotation. Keep much of the team intact and then just put in some players here and there to give partial rest to other players. And to me, Verhoeven has impressed me, whether, it was him coming on, last game or even playing the full game this game. He's solid on defense. He's positionally solid. I will say he's not the greatest going forward as far as I think one of his crosses was kind of atrocious, but our fullbacks aren't really great at offense. Their main job is playing defense, and I thought he played well, but he's impressed me when he's been on the pitch. And this is funny. If y'all remember at the beginning of the season, the hot topic was who are fullbacks going to be? Our fullbacks are not doing well. Now I can solidly say I like Willie. I like Verhoeven. Bombino is not bad either, but we will get to him a little bit later in this show. So it's good to see that we're solidifying this defense, that players are stepping up, that players are continuing to get better on the defensive side. And even though we allowed 1 goal today, that shouldn't have been allowed, and we'll get into the stats and talk about that. But what a shift from what it was to what it is now. I personally, as far as the Alvarado change, haven't liked Alvarado early in the season. He played a couple times early in the season, and I didn't really think he made an impression on me. So he didn't do anything horrible. He didn't do anything great. So he didn't make much of an impression on me. This game, I thought he had a great game, not a good game. I actually thought he had a great game. Did he make some mistakes? Absolutely. But he was controlled. He was composed. I thought he made a lot of the correct passes, which impressed me. But what impressed me the most, he was the first one to like 3 or 4 50-50 balls that ended up leading to attacks. He was the first one, charging at the ball when the ball was a loose ball. So I thought he had a good, not only a good showing, but a great showing in this game. The people that I thought had kind of the roughest game was actually the front 3. I just did not like Valakari up front. And the reason I don't like Valakari up front is because he's so much of a midfielder. They use him as a dropping striker, a hold-up play striker, which is fine. It doesn't work bad. It works okay. I mean, we still had chances, right? But what it does, it allows the defense, 4 people in the back line, to queue on the wings, right? Because if you know Valakari's going to drop deep middle, then they're going to queue up on the wings. We would have needed like a Luca De La Torre run from last game where he scored, where he goes kind of, in place of Dreer because Dreer dropped, and then Luca makes the run down the middle. Valakari's not going to make many runs down the middle, and he's not very fast. So I think he's just so unnatural in that position. It makes it tough for him to do the things that I think he needs to do while he's up in that position. I would have loved to see Alosky up front because I think Alosky, every time he's come on, he's been dangerous. And he makes runs. He makes the correct runs, which puts pressure on the 2 center backs to have to track that run, which means our wings have more space. They have more 1v1 opportunities. And that's why I like Alosky up there. And so I do wish Alosky would have been up there because I think that would have put more pressure on the Seattle defense. And we actually would have had more chances on goal, even though we had a pretty good amount of chances on goal this game. So that was something that, I wish was different. But overall, y'all know I've been, harsh on Mikey Varas the last week with the lineup changes. I thought he picked a pretty gosh darn good lineup. Maybe the only change I personally would have made would be Alosky up front. But I did like Alvarado, and I did like Verhoeven in the back. I did want to make a question, though. And, again, you have to be critical. We have to look at the entirety of the game. At the end of the day, this is a loss. And again, it shouldn't have been. We played way better. You can't blame coaches. You can't really blame the players all too much. But there's reasons why you lose. One thing I would ask, would it have been better to use our entire starting lineup this game? So had Chucky, had Godoy, Verhoeven still would have been in. Would have been better to play the full lineup this game against Seattle, who's the number 5 team in the West. It's also an away game. So that just makes it a harder game. And, Seattle came out in the front for early, and then we kind of dominated the rest of the game. And the reason I say that, it was roughly a 3-day break, and then now we're going into, I think, roughly another 3-day break. If we would have used our starters in the Seattle game, we could have then maybe made a little bit more lineup changes in the Austin FC game. And Austin FC has only had 1 win in their last 5 games. So that potentially tells me you're playing a little bit of a weaker team. You also would have been playing at Snapdragon, which would have maybe even emboldened your substitutes even more because there's more comfort, right? There's the crowd that's behind you. You feel comfortable on your pitch. So that was my real big question. Would it have been better to do the substitutions more so in the Austin FC game than the Seattle game because Seattle's just a tough team? I really don't think there's a right and wrong. That was just a question that popped up in my head as I was kind of reviewing the schedule that we have, and I saw the tickets for, this weekend at Austin FC. I was like, wait, Austin FC is not a good team. We could have maybe saved those substitutions. But hey, that's in hindsight. That's in the past. And now we got to look at the stats and look at really how much we dominated this game, because we absolutely dominated this game. You see the possession, you see the shots. And in the first half, we were even more dominant. Seattle, I think, had 1 shot and 1 shot on goal in the first half. And then you look at these full game stats, we still dominated in the shots, but they really caught up to us in shots on goal. And so I think, and that really came after they scored a goal. They were more enlivened. They were more confident. They got more shot attempts, and CJ made a great save right after the goal to keep us in that game. But look at the XG. Seattle, 0.4 XG. You can't even round that up to 1. It has to be a 0.5 to even round up. You can't even round that up to a 1 goal. And then you look at us and we had 1.1 XG. Even though that's not a massive XG, we were still for sure in control of this game. We had the better shots, the better opportunities, and it just didn't fall for us this game. And so, you really got to give kudos to Ferreira, who scored the goal for Seattle, because that was a phenomenal goal. Call a spade a spade. That's a phenomenal goal. Receiving a low, hard cross, touching it with your right foot, spinning around, and then finishing with the left on a tough defender, McVeigh. So that is just kudos. That is, dang, that is dope. But That was his first goal of the season. You hate to give that up, but I mean, CJ dos Santos didn't really stand a chance. That was a good turn, good goal, phenomenal goal. But if we look at the play in totality, Mikey Varas mentioned it in his post game that we were kind of out of position because when they restarted the ball, it was a little quick, and then our center defensive midfielders were there. I agree with that, and I think that's kind of what led to this. And if you kind of look back at the play, Bombino takes a step forward when I don't think he really needed to, which allowed space in behind because now he wasn't aligned with the rest of the defense. So it allowed a run to go in behind him, and that's what the offensive player got the ball on the wing that then passed it to Ferreira. Just one momentary lapse because literally Bombino took a step forward and then he realized he didn't need to, and he tried to track back, but it's too late, right? They capitalized on that little error. And again, on restarting the play a little quickly, which, Mikey Varas said it was kind of a weird play. It was, but again, it did give up the goal, and it was totally against the run of play. Like they didn't deserve this win. They didn't, but they got the win in the end. So we put a lot of pressure on them, and they just gained confidence after that goal, even though at the end of the game, we put so much pressure on them, just couldn't get that tie. I don't think we can blame all too many people for this game. I'm not blaming Varas. I'm not going to blame Bombino for this momentary lapse. I will say I want to be a little bit harsh on the front three. I didn't like what they were producing. They looked like they weren't on the same page. They looked like they were getting frustrated, not only at the game, but at each other. That never, brews confidence when you're frustrated with each other. Dreer, I thought he was in and out of the game. He had moments, but it wasn't very decisive enough, and he looked really frustrated to me. He was the one that looked really frustrated to me. Again, I didn't like Valakari up front. I would have rather had Iloski, which Iloski did come in on the end. But I want to call out somebody, and this is my guy. This is my guy. Everyone knows I like him. If you watch my prior episodes, he's only 21 years old. He's super young. But I thought Mighton had a really, really rough game. He just really did. He tried to play a little bit of hero ball. He tried to take defenders on by himself too many times. I want you to take on defenders, and I want you to do 1v1s, 1v2s every now and then. But he just kept going back to the well. And I think he missed a few passes. He wasn't playing within the rhythm of the game. He was trying to do hero ball a little bit. But I do like Mighton. I like Mighton more as an auxiliary option, as almost a third option. Because think of it, when Chucky is on the left, when Dreer is down the middle, who are the defenses queuing on? They're queuing on those two. Also, it shifts things a lot to the left because you have Chucky on the left side, which allows Mighton a lot more 1v1s or a lot of just getting in behind and having space. So I like Mighton more as an auxiliary option because I think he has growth. He still needs to grow as an offensive player. But I will say he stunk it up, but he did have the best chance of the first half where he, cuts in on a defender because Dreer made the run through, and then he takes a shot on goal, but it wasn't far enough in the corner. But the goalie made a great save. That could have been a different game. That could have been a moment that he should have had. But again, that's what you get paid for. If you are a front person, you get paid to score. So I did want to say that, I wanted to be a little bit harsh on Mighton because I think that was a really rough game on his end. And he obviously got subbed off on halftime. Chucky comes in, but it just really wasn't working. I thought the entire front, the entire game looked frustrated to me and didn't look quite on the same page. But I thought, again, we played better. We were the better team. But hey, at the end of the day, a loss is a loss, and we need to focus on that next one. And that next one, Austin FC. And we need to get that game because we're in the second spot still. We're still in the second spot. But we got 3 teams that are 1 point or less behind us in the table. So next game is super important on where we could potentially be in the table. And we want to solidify those top spots. We want to continue to put pressure on the teams below us, but also continue to put pressure on Vancouver, who seems to be running away with the West right now. But as y'all know, LFG SDFC. I'm Mike Geo with the Penalty Kick Podcast.